Good morning, it's your man Pastor Jay with another reflection on devotion. Today we're looking at Acts chapter 25. And what we're beginning to see is a pattern of kind of weak leaders in the Roman community. Yesterday we talked about Felix, and we found out that Felix was dealing with, didn't want to deal with the issue of Paul because he wanted to have favor with the Jews. And so he left Paul in his custody for like 2 years. And then the next ruler came on the scene, Festus. He was left with this situation. And so Festus travels to Jerusalem and he meets with the leaders, and they want him to bring Paul to them so that they could ambush and kill him. But he is insisting that they come down to Caesarea. But what we have here is Festus like, okay, I need to meet with this guy myself. And when he meets with him, he finds there's nothing that Paul has done wrong. And so it is just, one thing after another. And so Festus, not knowing what to do, he appeals to one of his, I believe it's superiors, King Agrippa, to try to get some insight on what he should do. And it's real interesting that Festus is plainly saying, listen, there's nothing that I can find any fault with this guy. Much like with Jesus, with Pilate not being able to know how to handle the situation, here we have a similar situation with Paul. And Paul continues to stand up for himself. He's saying, if I were a wrongdoer, this is in verse 11, and have committed anything worthy of death, I would not refuse to die. He's saying, if I did it, I'd take the blame for it and I'd be willing to go. But I didn't do anything. I didn't break any of your laws. I didn't break any of the Jewish laws. I didn't break any of the laws of the temple. And so he's, again, trying to save his life. And so he appeals to Caesar. And when he makes that appeal to Caesar as a Roman citizen, he has the right to be tried. It's much like our court system in moving up the channel with appeals. And you could go all the way to the Supreme Court if it takes that long. However, Paul is being called, he's appealing to Caesar, so he has to be sent through that system. And in this chapter, we hear, again, Paul really trying to help Festus understand that he's innocent. These are some trumped up charges, and that all he's interested in doing is spreading the gospel. What we need to understand is sometimes we're going to be in these types of situations where we may be going through a time where we feel kind of caged in, not able to really do what we know God has called us to do, but having to deal with these circumstances that are holding us back. But we need to understand that during this time when Felix first had him and then Festus, Paul was not just being idle. Because he had a certain level of freedom, he was able to write some of the books we know from the Bible, from the New Testament, some of these epistles. He was constantly praying and visiting. He was still ministering as people were able to come and visit him. So even when it doesn't seem like you're advancing, even though it may seem you're not able to do what God is calling you to do, take that time to better yourself, get more education, study more, kind of work through some of your issues so that when you have the opportunity, you'll be able to take advantage of them. And I'm not just speaking to you guys, I'm speaking to myself. We all need to make sure that we're constantly trying to improve on the gifts that God gives us, on the talents that we have, so that we can do everything to the glory of God. Again, this has been some interesting reading. I pray that you are reading through this chapter with me. This book with me. It can be encouraging. It can kind of help us understand some of the things that the New Testament saints had to go through, and so that we can be encouraged and we can be motivated to spread the gospel. Please tune in again tomorrow for another reflection on devotion. Share if it's been a blessing to you. We'll see you tomorrow morning. God bless.